Right now, somewhere in your mouth, a sound is forming. You do not think about it. You never have. Your tongue finds its position, your lips adjust, your vocal cords tighten by exactly the right amount, and out comes a word. A specific word. A word that carries meaning. A word that another person understands instantly, without effort, without confusion. That feels ordinary. It is not. What you just did is the strangest, most improbable thing any creature on this planet has ever learned to do. And the strangest part is not that you can speak. The strangest part is that you almost could not. That for a long time, maybe a very long time, there was a version of your ancestors walking this earth with all the hardware for language and none of the software. And then, at some point, something changed. One person, or one small group, crossed a threshold that no creature had ever crossed before. What happened in the moment before the very first human word? Linguists call it the hardest problem in science. Not black holes, not consciousness. Language, because unlike bones or tools or fire pits, language leaves no fossil. It evaporates the moment it is spoken. So everything you're about to hear is reconstructed from what remains. Skulls, stone tools, genetic, and the strange, stubborn echoes that still live inside your own mouth right now. Start with the basics. You are not the first animal to communicate. Let that sit for a moment. Every creature that has ever lived has communicated in some way. Bees communicate the location of flowers through dance. Vervet monkeys use distinct alarm calls for eagles, snakes, and leopards. Prairie dogs, according to the research of biologist Kon Slobodikov, can describe the size, shape, color, and speed of an approaching predator in a single call. These are remarkable systems. They are not language. Here is the difference. A bee cannot tell another bee about a flower it saw yesterday. A vervet monkey cannot warn about a predator that is not there. A prairie dog cannot say what it was like before the hawk arrived. Every animal communication system on Earth is locked to the present moment. It can only signal what is happening now. Your language does something no other system does. It moves through time. You can describe the past. You can imagine the future. You can talk about things that do not exist, that have never existed, that might never exist. You can tell a lie. You can tell a story. You can ask what would happen if. This is called displacement. And until roughly 70,000 years ago, give or take, nothing on this planet had it. So what changed? The anatomy came first. This is important. The physical ability to speak arrived long before language did. Your larynx sits lower in your throat than any other primate's, which creates a longer vocal tract capable of producing a far wider range of sound. Fossils suggest this anatomical shift may have begun as far back as 500,000 years ago, possibly earlier. Neanderthals, your closest evolutionary cousins, had a hyoid bone, the small U-shaped bone that anchors the muscles of the tongue and throat, nearly identical to yours. They may have been physically capable of producing complex sounds, but the sounds do not appear to have become language. Not in the way yours did. Paleoanthropologist Ian Tattersall of the American Museum of Natural History has argued that the brain reorganized before the language system fully ignited, that there was a long, quiet gap, possibly hundreds of thousands of years, between the moment your ancestors could physically speak and the moment they actually began to. A period of anatomical readiness, waiting for something else. Something cognitive, something social. This is where it gets strange. Around 70,000 years ago, human behavior changed dramatically and suddenly. Archaeological evidence shows an explosion of art, long-distance trade, symbolic objects, complex tools. Anthropologists call this the Great Leap Forward, or the behavioral modernity explosion. And almost every serious researcher connects it to a single development, full recursive symbolic language. Recursive means the thing can refer to itself. You can have a sentence inside a sentence, a story inside a story, a thought about a thought. You can say, she said that he believed that they hoped. That nesting, that infinite regress, that ability to layer meaning on top of meaning is uniquely human. Linguist Noam Chomsky has spent decades arguing that this recursive capacity, what he calls merge, is the central engine of all human language. One simple operation. Take two things and combine them. Then take that combination and combine it with something else. Endlessly. A single mutation, Chomsky and his colleagues suggest, may have triggered it. A single neurological reorganization that suddenly allowed your ancestors to nest concepts inside concepts, to refer to things that were not present, to plan for events that had not yet happened. And then, for the first time in the history of this planet, a person spoke. Not a grunt, not an alarm call, a word that stood for something beyond the immediate moment, a word that named a thing that was not there, and another person understood it. Think about what that requires. Two brains, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures, sharing a symbolic system, agreeing without explicit negotiation that this sound means that thing. The philosopher Daniel Dennett calls this the miracle of language, not in a mystical sense, but in a probabilistic one. The odds of that shared symbolic system emerging, spreading, and stabilizing were, by almost any measure, extraordinarily low. And yet here you are. Now here is the counterintuitive part. Language may not have begun as communication at all. Evolutionary biologist Robin Dunbar of Oxford University has proposed what he calls the social brain hypothesis. The idea that language evolved not to share information about the world, but to share information about people, to gossip, to track who is reliable, who is dangerous, who did what to whom. Because as human groups grew larger, the old primate system of social bonding through physical grooming, one-on-one, became too slow. Language, Dunbar argues, is vocal grooming, a way to bond with multiple individuals simultaneously, to maintain a social network too large for any other primate to manage. On this view, the first human conversations were not about predators or food. They were about relationships. Someone said something about someone else who was not there, and everyone leaned in. That impulse has not gone anywhere. It lives in every conversation you have had today. The ones about what so-and-so said, about who did what, about whether someone can be trusted. Your brain was built for that. The content changes. The craving never does. But language did not stop at gossip. Once the system was running, once the recursive engine was live, it could do something no one could have predicted. It could accumulate. A single person could learn something and pass it on. The next person could build on it. The next could build further. Anthropologists call this cumulative culture, or the ratchet effect. Every other animal species starts from scratch each generation. Your species does not. Every word you know was passed to you. Every concept you hold was built by someone before you, added to by someone before them. The entire history of human civilization, every tool, every city, every law, every song, every cure for every disease, every idea that has ever changed the world, is downstream of that first moment when a symbolic sound moved between two minds and meant something. You are not just a creature that speaks. You are the end product of an unbroken chain of speakers stretching back 70,000 years. And here is where it mirrors back onto you. Right now, there are approximately 7,000 languages alive on Earth. One dies on average every 2 weeks. When a language dies, it does not just lose words. It loses a way of seeing. The Pira people of the Amazon, studied extensively by linguist Daniel Everett, have a language with no numbers, no concept of past or future tense, no creation myth, no words for colors. Not because they cannot see these things, but because their language does not need to encode them. Their language is built entirely for the immediate, the present, the real. Everett argues it is the closest thing to a pre-linguistic cognitive state still visible in a living culture. When that language goes silent, that window closes forever. Every language carries inside it a different architecture of thought, a different way of cutting the world into pieces and naming the pieces. When you speak, you are not just communicating. You are inheriting a cognitive structure built over thousands of years by people who are gone. You are thinking in their categories, seeing through their distinctions, carrying their decisions about what matters enough to have a word for. The last living speaker of a dying language is not just the last person who can say certain sounds. They are the last person alive who thinks in a particular way. When they go silent, a way of being human disappears with them. And yet here you are, tonight, with a mouth full of sounds, each one loaded with 70,000 years of history. You do not think about it. You never have. Your tongue finds its position. Your lips adjust. Your vocal cords tighten by exactly the right amount, and out comes a word. That feels ordinary. You now know it is the most extraordinary thing any creature has ever done.